Hey guys, we want to thank Cap City Tees for sponsoring today's episode. That's right, Cap City Tees, the #1 printing company in Sacramento. Well, at least in our hearts. Cap City Tees is an amazing company putting out amazing quality at, most importantly, amazing prices. They are in line with any major retailer out there. Now, if you're in need of getting a shirt screen printed or embroidered, whether that's your local soccer team or basketball team or volleyball team or all the way up to corporate clothing, Cap City Tees is the place to go. So if you're in need or if you're in want, reach out to Cap City Tees at capcitytees.com or capcitytees@gmail.com. That's capcitytees@gmail.com. Welcome to the Hard Money Show, where we talk about real estate, home loans, and media. It is a good day when we can jump on the podcast and talk about some stuff that I think you guys are going to find interesting. Now, I've given a lot of consideration over the last week or two about how I want to format these single person podcasts. I understand that when we have guests on, those are a little bit easier to do, at least for me, because I understand that we're going to be talking about their story. We're going to be talking about how they got into real estate. We're going to be talking about their opinions on the market. And obviously, I'm going to be giving some insight on that as well. But when we do the single podcast, I really want to try to achieve two things. One, I really want it to be entertaining, right? I know it can be really difficult to go back to one individual who's talking about maybe what it seems like the same thing. And so I want it to be interesting. I think ultimately every podcaster wants that, but I also want it to be educational, right? I want people to learn about the real estate market, the home loan market, and corresponding industries so they can become better consumers, or you can become a better person within our industry and help bolster it. And that's kind of leads me into what we're going to talk about today. Now, this may be a hot take, and I know that this isn't blanketed across our entire industry or across the entire world because of what we're going to be talking about. But ultimately, what I think we're talking about today, I think it's going to resonate because when I do Google searches about realtors, it's not great, right? There's not, if you look up, just type in realtor, a lot of those tags that come down, they're not great reference of what's happening in the real estate market and how people are being treated and their overall experience. And so what I wanted to talk about today is why people don't trust realtors. I want to talk about that. I want to explore that idea. And then hopefully at the end, we'll be able to discuss a little bit about how to become more trustworthy in the industry, or at least be able to find somebody who is trustworthy in the industry, right? I think historically, we are taught to be suspicious of people, right? You grow up as a little kid, don't take candies from strangers, don't get into white vans that are rolling around your neighborhood, right? We're taught to be cautious and make sure that we're only talking to the people that we're supposed to, and understand that those people are the people that take care of us, right? And help us grow. And anybody else, at least as a kid, unless your parents introduce you to them or a friend or something like that, to be suspicious of them. So when we think about that, right, that when we grow up with that sort of mentality, what other way are we supposed to think when a person that we don't really know tries to come to us and sell us something, regardless of whether we need it or not? We're going to be a little suspicious, right? Because of the way that we grew up. And I think this could, teeter-totter one way or the other, and whether you kind of think of this in the way of, do you think people are innately good, or do you think that people are innately bad, right? I think we grow up in the sort of environment you're in, whether you're taught to be suspicious of people or not. you might grow up in an area where, yeah, you're going to be suspicious, but for the most part, the community that you're in are pretty good people. And that has been your experience growing up. And so maybe you think, well, I have no reason not to trust somebody who's trying to sell me something. Maybe they are doing it full heartedly or they are doing it, with all good intentions. And I have no reason to do that. Or maybe you grew up in a way where you were in a community where maybe there weren't a lot of good people, right? There were some bad people and you did see some bad stuff going on. You have a reason to be more suspicious. Now, we have this kind of adage that is in the real estate market that everyone's cousin is a realtor because so many people are licensed. And so obviously, if you're dealing with a family member or a friend, you're going to feel like you can trust them a lot more. But we're going to kind of exclude them a little bit. Now, keep in mind, maybe your family member isn't trustworthy. I don't know, right? But we hope that they all are. And so we kind of look at this first point of why we don't trust realtors or why people don't trust realtors as kind of this historical things that we grow up over time or things that we've seen that have happened in the past. And I think of things like, for myself, I think of things like pyramid schemes, right? Or things that are pyramid scheme-ish, right? Where you try to use other people to help you make money, but it might not be in their best interest, right? You're just trying to help yourself. And hopefully people are entering these type of things with good intentions and they want everybody to make money. But I think of things like Herbalife, and that's just the one that kind of resonates with me the most because that's what I remember growing up hearing about, right? And you would hear about some people who would become millionaires off of this, and then other people who had wasted, their life savings on trying to do this and it didn't work out. Then you can also think about, the things that you see in your life, whether it be in the media or it just be hearing the story from friends or family. But there's a lot of stories about bad salesmen just in general from the past, right? Taking advantage of the consumer. And I think that there's a big shift in our economy. And I don't want to get too much into that, but I remember, we say this a lot, and I think maybe this is just a thing about getting older, but things used to be built better. And now that I get older and I've seen certain things and I've read certain stuff, I realize that is actually the truth. Things used to be made much better, and they make them worse now because if they continue to make things really well, then you won't need to buy them, and that cuts into their margins, right? So everything is mostly built to have a certain shelf life. They know about how long it should last, and then you got to repurchase it, right? So that's sort of knowledge that comes in your head, and then not just knowing that things are like built like that, but also that people will try to take advantage of you and get you to buy things that you shouldn't or that are not very good. And I remember one time when I was much younger, I bought something off some like third party website. I thought it was going to be like a tablet essentially of some sort. And it turns out it was this piece of crap little wood thing with this little screen that goes over your phone to magnify it. And even that didn't work really well, right? So I think we have these bad experiences as well, and it kind of taints us a little bit. Now, if you're a little bit older, bringing this back to the real estate market or mortgage market, we can see the mortgage meltdown in '08. And everybody who kind of I talk to now who's in this age where they want to get a home or they want to refinance or they want to get an investment property, it always goes back to that because that was such a prevalent thing that happened in our lives where, we found out that the mortgage people working in the mortgage market were taking advantage and were giving bad loans out and were doing it and becoming filthy rich and not really being held accountable by the government. And so you look at stuff like that, and then that gets perpetuated in the media. All of these things get perpetuated in the media. And then you kind of blanket everybody that is in sales, and you kind of say, well, I need to be a little standoffish when I'm dealing with this person because my past experiences, past history has taught me that a lot of people try to take advantage of people when it comes to services like this, right? I remember one of the big ones that I kind of remember growing up, and this has never happened to me, and maybe it's because my brother is a mechanic, and so I never had that, but mechanic shops taking advantage of people. I remember The Mask with Jim Carrey, and they were, he had this one little problem, and he goes in, and they're like, okay, well, now you have this gigantic bill. I remember Matilda. I don't know if you guys remember that with the little girl, but her dad's a car salesman, or owns a shop and sells cars, and he takes advantage of people like that. So these sort of things that you see around, and you're kind of like, well, I have this wall up innately to not trust realtors. Now, has the real estate market given any specific reason not to trust them? Well, yeah. I mean, that's going to happen because there's so many people that are licensed. There's so many people that are underqualified to be doing this job as a career, and for individuals. We're going to get into that more, but just innately, I think we start off on kind of a bad foot thinking about realtors because they are in sales. Now, again, I understand that maybe you're not this type of person, or maybe you have somebody that you can trust, and that's great. But for those of you that don't, and you don't know where to look, you don't know who to trust, you don't know how to determine how to trust them, this could be your kind of starting point. That makes it really difficult because you're making one of the largest purchases of your life. Typically, most people in America, they will buy a home or be in a real estate transaction no more than 3 times in their lifetime, right? Most people 1 time. So unless they're refinancing and things like that, but I mean purchasing the home. And so it's such a big purchase. It's such a large investment. And it's not like when I got that little magnifier for my phone where I can just wipe my hands of it and be like, well, that was, whatever, a couple bucks is not a big deal. You buy a house and you're not happy with it, that's a big deal. So that's our kind of starting point, and I totally understand that, right? Now, we get into really the heart of the problem here is that it's a sale-based career, right? So the very nature that realtors are commission-based, right? The fact that they make their money 100% off of your deals is another reason I think a lot of people have a hard time buying into this model and buying into what these people do. You as an individual don't know what they need to know, right? But you do know that they make their money off of how much your house sells for, or how much they're going to buy that house for, and whatever those commission breaks are. And so when you know that it's in their best interest for you to spend more money by getting a bigger house or a more expensive house, whatever the way that works out, you might feel like, well, are you really doing this for in my best interest? The other thing is the very nature of being in a commission-based business is you don't have steady and consistent pay. And so we talk about this a lot at our brokerage, where we want to put people in the best financial situation to be able to do this job ethically and come from a place of comfort. It's a really, really difficult to be in a sales-based job and not have money. It's really hard. And what I mean, I don't mean like no money, but I mean you're at a point where you're like, I really have to get a sale. I really have to get a sale. And you're like, the more I can get, the more I can get. And that's where we don't want to put people. That's where I don't want to put people. That's where when I do my coaching, I try to get people's full background, full kind of understanding of where they're at financially. And it's interesting because I've had jobs where part of my employment had to do with my finances. And it's not like they did a full deep dive, but they do a background check to make sure I don't have like any foreclosures or anything like that, because they wanted to make sure that, and this happens inside of the mortgage industry. It doesn't happen in the real estate side. They make sure that you're financially sound for the most part, because you're going to be dealing with people's money. And so there's nothing really like that. And so people get their license, and I think a lot of time they hope that they're going to get in the real estate market and they're just going to make, whatever, $100,000 or $500,000 their first year. And that doesn't happen. Most people don't do the first deal. And yes, I understand, we hear about people who did their first deal, their first year, and they closed 30 properties. Yes. Okay. It does happen. It's a very, very small part of our industry. Most people don't do their first deal for the first 6 to 9 months. And so when you think about that and this really depends on the brokerage they're at, right? A lot of people really think like, oh, I'm going to go to these big block brokerages and I'm going to win and I'm going to be fine. But the problem is, and I'm not talking bad about big block brokerages, they have their advantages. But what I am saying is that when you spent all of this time to get your license, then you spent the money to get your license, and now you're spending money at these big block brokerages, or maybe any brokerage, could be a small one, but you're paying for desk fees, you're paying for marketing fees, you're paying for headshots, you're paying for business cards, you're paying for custom clothing, you're paying for all of this stuff, right? You're paying for your flyers to do door knocking, and you're paying, coaching fees at your brokerage, and all of this stuff starts to add up, and those savings you had start to dwindle and you don't have it. And I think people feel this in our industry, not just the realtor, but the consumer. They can feel when you're desperate, and that's a bad look for our industry. And it's another reason why people won't trust realtors, right? Because they're like, I can feel this guy really needs to get a sale, and not in a way where it's like, this guy needs to get a sale, he's going to do whatever he can to give me the best experience. He's going to do whatever he can to get me the best deal. He's going to give me the best service. No, it's in the way like he's going to do whatever he can to get the sale for himself. And so that's another thing that doesn't come off very great that we're trying to combat at our brokerage, where I know there's other brokerages that I've kind of seen that are doing this. We gotta put you in the best financial situation. And ultimately it's a commission-based career, right? For most people. If you have never done this, or you can't do this, it's not for everybody. I mean, that's the 100% truth. I think this industry, people would trust realtors more if the people realized quicker that this isn't the industry for them. They shouldn't be in it. They made a mistake by jumping in. Maybe it's more of a part-time thing they have to do with the job, and they can just keep their license and use it to their benefit. But again, then that doesn't make you a very competent realtor for the most part. So you kind of come up with another thing like that. But I think the nature of this being a sales-based industry is another reason why people don't trust realtors, or they definitely are standoffish from them, right? So this kind of leads me to the next thing, which is actually becoming a realtor and actually being a realtor, kind of the career of itself, right? And so the first thing is, and I've been talking about this a little bit, but it's too easy to qualify to become a realtor, right? Now, I've said this time and time again. I thought the exam was pretty hard, and that's coming from somebody who likes school. I love learning. I will always continue to learn. So that's my first thing. But also I have 2 advanced degrees, right? I have a bachelor's degree, I have a master's degree. So I'm not, I'm the ideal type of person to continue to get like something like a real estate license. And most people are not, right? So even with that in mind, I thought the exam was still pretty hard, but it's not hard enough that a lot of people can get it and not be qualified for this. And I think people kind of understand that. They don't fully know what goes into it, but I think they kind of understand that, like, they'll see people and they'll say, oh, well, if he got it, it must not be that hard, right? And for some people that might not be true. For other people, it is extremely true. There are people that have their license now that shouldn't have their license because it's not hard enough of an exam. I don't know how to make it any more difficult. That you could raise the level at which you need to pass the exam. The real estate exam, you only need a 70% to pass. So you could do that, but ultimately, that's the first thing, right? The next thing is there's not really enough oversight. Now, some brokerages are okay, other brokerages might be great, but I would say as a whole, because so many people carry their license and don't do a lot of work, or maybe they do pretty well and then they get autonomy, there's not enough oversight from brokerages over realtors to make sure that they're, and this is a kind of a ties into the fact that there's not enough, like, I guess, hand holding in the real estate industry. The thought is you become a realtor, it's your job to get good at it, right? And that's not really true, because the brokerage is in charge, right? And a lot of people do not understand this, but the deals that realtor gets, they're not the realtor's deals. They are the brokerage's deal. The brokerage actually owns those deals, and they're letting the agent do the deal for them. Now, the agent, because they brought the deal and they get the majority of the money and things like that, but it is the broker's deal. So there is an obligation, in my opinion, by the brokerage to do, a service to make sure your realtors are educated, to make sure your realtors are competent on what they're doing and that they're working ethically, right? And to really kind of engage what's going on. I personally know there are a lot of brokerages that are very hands off and they just kind of let them do what they do. And yeah, there's laws in place and things like that, but it's your brokerage. You can just tell them that they can't be there anymore, and then the burden will fall on somebody else, but you're at least taking some sort of stance. And so the fact that people are getting qualified very easily, the fact that there's not a lot of oversight, the fact that there's not a lot of education, the fact that there's not, enough, responsibility taken on the side of the brokerages, it creates an environment where we have unqualified realtors, right? And so I'm not going to say necessarily that you have to be qualified as a realtor, you need to do it full time, because I believe that there's enough wiggle room in this where you can do it part-time and you can learn how to do it very well, especially if you do these for years and years and years. You can learn how to do contracts and work with people and things like that, right? But ultimately, I would say that the best people are the people that probably do it full-time, or at least close and do full-time, or at least if they do it part-time, they're doing quite a bit of transactions, because that way they know how the industry works and how to navigate and things like that, right? So we have this kind of combination of everything on why people don't trust realtors. And this is a problem for consumers and for people in our industry, because the question people, when we're in these coaching sessions, like, how do I get business? And there's a lot of stuff we can go into that. Maybe it might be interesting once or twice to do a podcast about some of those inside coaching sessions. But ultimately, one of the things that you have to do is you have to create relationships, right? And creating relationships is nothing more than creating trust between two people. That's what relationship building is, right? And so you need to be able to create relationships, and you need to be able to do it authentically. You need to be able to do it in a way where you are bolstering what you do, and that you are able to fully address what's going on in the market, and that you fully understand that, as well as how to do the job, right? And you can't really do that unless you spend time in the industry. And whether that's selling houses or at least researching what's going on in the market and being diligent about that, you're going to come off as incompetent, right? And so when we're kind of wrapping this all together and we're thinking, how do I become a better realtor? How do I become trustworthy? And how do I find somebody that's trustworthy? There's a couple things that I think about. The first thing is education, right? Now, I don't think that, I know there's like certificates you can get in different aspects of the real estate market, and that's great. I like that because I like certificates and things like that. So I do like that. But when we're thinking about this, I also want you to understand there's different ways to be educated in this industry that are not necessarily going to come from a certificate. For one, there's no certificate on understanding what's going on in your market right now, right? Or what's going on last year. And so I want for you to be come off as competent and to be educated in what we're doing. You need to be on the MLS. You need to be looking at past trends. You need to be looking at micro communities, what's on the market, what's coming off the market, what's short sale, what's in foreclosure, all of those sort of things. You need to learn how to do the contracts. And you need to jump into conversations about real estate frequently to be able to express this information, right? So if you're newer, right, then that's kind of your big focus, because nobody's really going to trust somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about. I mean, that's the truth, right? Whether it's your friends or family, like they're going to be like, well, I don't know, maybe that's right, but it sounds a little off. So being educated is kind of the biggest thing that I can really say. And there's a lot of ways to go in to get educated like that. But that's the big thing, right? Look for someone that's educated who can speak about stuff competently and things like that. I think the biggest thing for me is approaching this industry in a way where you're doing it because you actually want to help people, right? Money is important. We all need money. I grew up extremely poor. I understand this. But if you come into this industry and it's all about money and that's all you care about, you might just innately come off in a way that is not trustworthy, right? Now, maybe a few people, they do because it's all about the money, they do a really good job and people don't really care. They're like, well, you did a good job for me and that's fine. But for most people, if you're not in this industry to help people, to get them into a home that they love, that they're going to be happy with. I know I was just talking to a friend and I was telling him about this past statistic about millennials in the last couple of years, that they are the least happy purchasers in the realm of purchasers, and that they're not happy with what they purchased. They're not happy with the direction that they're pushed to go. And maybe that says something about millennials in general. I'm a millennial, but I think for the most part, it means that they trusted somebody and they didn't do necessarily what was best by them. And that could have been purely based off the fact that they didn't really know what they were doing. And because of that, they didn't explain things well enough. And now people are upset, right? Maybe you did a good job, but you just weren't competent enough to tell them what was going on and what was going to really happen when you're a homeowner, because it is a lot different than being, a renter. My wife and I just replaced our shower towel racks, right? That's something I really wouldn't need to do if I was a renter. And so, plastering the wall and texturing it and reinstalling and stuff like that. And so these are things that a very small thing, but there's things about owning a home that really need to be expressed through the realtor, I believe, for people to be happy with what happened. So that could be it. The other reason could just be that somebody did them wrong, because they wanted to make money. And so it's really important that you're coming into the industry to help people, right? And do the best you can, because yes, the first thing is to be educated on what we're doing, and understand what happens, not only from start to finish, but what happens after that, 6 months to 12 months after owning a home. If they need to file some sort of claim with their, with the home warranty, if they get a supplemental tax bill, things like that, right? It's good to be in the know and kind of like prepare people, because they're going to feel like they were taken care of even after the transaction's done. So that's part of the education. That's part of also just feeling like, hey, like it's my responsibility. Even though I know the transaction is going to be over, these are some things that might come up that you might need help with. So make sure you're saving these documents and things like that, right? The next thing, and really this is kind of the last thing, is we as an industry need to become better, right? And this is a really tough thing to do, because There's so many brokerages. They all have their own missions. They all have their own way of making money. They all have their own thought process on what the real estate industry can be like. And I want to say, I haven't really seen any other brokerage. And keep in mind, I don't research every brokerage, but I want to say that our brokerage is one of the few brokerages, at least in California, if not the country, that is trying to build career realtors. It's not about putting as much money in our pocket as we possibly can. It's about making this a sustainable career for realtors. And you'll find, and I mean, a good example of this is as much as people like Zillow and Redfin and things like that, and they like the ability to just go and look at a house through them, or even looking at the industry like the car industry, like Carvana, where you can, or other ones where you can just order your car online and things like that. These are real estate brokerages that are creating an industry that makes it harder for realtors to be realtors. I don't understand that, right? So you're making all your money off of realtors, and then you're also making it harder for them. And I'm not saying they're making it more difficult they're making the education harder. They're making them learn more skill sets. No, they're simply just taking the consumer out of their hands and keeping it for themselves, or charging the realtor a stronger fee. So now they're putting, again, this realtor in a position where now they have to make a decision, right? Like, I got to really push these people because I spent $1,000 this month on trying to get Zillow leads. And so for me, I think there's a lot of odd contradiction in the industry. And this is why I love where I work, because we are legitimately trying. We're not doing all of that. We're trying to build career realtors, and we're not trying to take money out of your pocket. We're trying to help you become the best realtor, so then you can give the best service to the consumer, right? And so I guess if you're a consumer and you're trying to find what brokerage should I work with, or what home loan company should I work with, I guess selfishly I would say, well, just work with me, right? But that's not what the Hard Money Show is all about. I want to give people options. I want to help push you guys, the people who are doing well in the industry, and motivate them to continue to do well in the industry, and hopefully for them become career realtors. I would just say ask some questions, right? Be a little bit knowledgeable. Listen to the podcast, because we go over a lot of stuff where I think if you're listening to this, you might better understand what questions you should be asking, what you should be searching for, and what sort of stuff should they know. And once you can kind of attack it from that way, then you can at least put yourself in a position where you can trust the choices that your realtor is making with you. And then you guys can build this process together, because again, it is a scary process. You're buying one of the biggest things you'll ever buy in your life. And so it's important to work with somebody you trust, that you're comfortable with, that you feel like you can speak to openly, and they can speak to you openly. And this isn't just the realtor, right? Because again, this is why we talk about real estate, home loans, and media. The real estate partnership and home loan partnership are all together, right? So you need both of those people need to be like your go-to people. You need to be able to work with all of them. And this is why I think it's so important to work with brokerages that have in-house lending, like we do. And the reason being is because it's already tough enough for you to trust one person, let alone two people. Now those two people have to trust that they're going to do their jobs and they're going to communicate effectively. And if you're lucky enough to meet with the home loan company or meet with the realtor who has already established referral partners or established partnerships with the opposite side, then hopefully they already have a good relationship. But I find a lot of times that realtors don't. And they say, well, are you working with, a loan company or whatever? And I know that because we often get a lot of loans where we don't know the realtors. So we have to create partnerships with them. Or sometimes our realtors get deals where they've already decided they're going to work with a different loan company, right? So it does happen in the industry. But what I'm saying, we come back to, is now those two people have to trust each other, and then you have to trust those two people, and then they have to trust you, right? It's this relationship building that's happening, and it makes it a little bit easier when everybody is in-house, like at Orbit Home Loans and Orbit Realty. We work together. It's under one, these two separate brokerages, but they're owned by the same individual, and we work together. I have realtor partners that they'll do the real estate, I'll do the home loans. I already know this, established relationships, and now we are having every meeting, together with you. And so, I would just say for that sort of thing, find somebody that you can build a team around, because it's not just about finding one or the other in this industry. You got to have both. So real estate industry can be pretty difficult. I think if we look at it as a whole, people don't really trust realtors, and they're not super confident going in and working with them, but there's reason for that, right? And so it's our job as realtors to overcome those reasons. It's your job as a consumer to search out and be educated on what's going on, listen to the podcast, learn a few things to take to these people to test them, and ultimately find somebody who's going to sell your house right, who's going to help you get into a house night, who's going to refinance you correctly, all of these sort of things. So hopefully that was interesting. Before we jump off, I do want to give a shout out to Cap City Tees, because hope you guys can see if you're listening to the podcast and you don't see it, but I got some of my new Sac City Tee apparel on today. So they gave me a couple hats, they gave me a couple shirts, we got the logos on them. They are amazing. I love them. So thank you guys very much. If you guys are looking for custom apparel that you guys want either stitched or screen printed on or whatever that may be, Cap City Tees is the place to be. They're awesome. They're doing great work. They got this to me pretty quickly, and yeah, they're great. So thank you guys for being on. Again, this is the Hard Money Show, where we talk about real estate, home loans, and media. You guys have a great day.